From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. Venezuela has broken off diplomatic and political relations with the United States after President Donald Trump recognized the illegal swearing-in of an interim president by the Venezuelan opposition. President Nicolás Maduro gave 72 hours for all U.S. diplomatic personnel to leave the country. He accused the U.S. government of trying to divide the Venezuelan people and promote a coup d'etat.
I have decided to break off diplomatic and political relations with the imperialist government of the United States. Out of Venezuela. They can all leave. Enough intervention. We have dignity here. Here there is a people disposed to defend their country. I signed the diplomatic note giving 72 hours for all the diplomatic staff of the United States in Venezuela to leave. I am signing it in the name of the people of Venezuela.
Maduro made the announcement to thousands of supporters outside the Miraflores presidential palace, this at the end of a march in defense of democracy. The president reminded the people that it was the U.S. that pushed for the overthrow of democratic governments all across Latin America during the 20th century.
For the revolutionary changes which are America for 2 centuries has demanded, called for throughout the 20th century under the domination of imperialism. We were witnesses of a policy, an interventionist policy.
The Venezuelan opposition have also taken to the streets in several cities. Addressing some of the protesters, the leader of the opposition-controlled National Assembly, Juan Guaidó, illegally declared himself interim president of Venezuela. This was the biggest demonstration that Venezuela's opposition has managed to organize in the last year or more. The supposed swearing-in of Guaidó has quickly been recognized not only by the Trump administration, but by a number of U.S. allies. This includes 11 of the 14 members of the Lima Group, which earlier this month agreed not to recognize President Maduro. However, Guyana and St. Lucia, as well as Mexico, did not sign the declaration in support of Guaidó. The opposition move was roundly rejected by those on the Chavista march.
We are asking the courts to respond to the big mistake this gentleman is making by declaring himself interim president. No one voted for him. We had elections and the opposition decided not to participate. Why do they want to seize power now? I voted for Maduro. Who voted for Guaido? No one.
It's a big mistake, what he is doing. The people of Venezuela are marching today in defense of the revolution and democracy, and against interventionism. This is a very delicate situation. We're calling on people here to join the national demonstrations, and not to respond to these provocations that are being mounted by the right wing in the country, and supported by the United States. We, the working people, are against intervention. The people in Venezuela are on alert.
Tens of thousands of people marched to the presidential palace in defense of the Bolivarian revolution. They reject what they see as an attempt coup by the opposition, and they oppose unprecedented interference by the United States. The Venezuelan armed forces also condemned the swearing-in of Guaidó as unconstitutional. This is all happening on the anniversary of the popular uprising that deposed the dictator Marcos Pérez Jiménez 61 years ago.
Today we are the Bolivarian youth, the Chavista youth, the Venezuelan youth, accompanying the Bolivarian process that is led by Comrade Nicolás Maduro. We as young people, as an expression of national sovereignty, with the expression of our freedom, of our democracy, we are today in the streets of Caracas defending the Bolivarian revolution.
And the Bolivian president, Evo Morales, has sent his solidarity to Venezuelans and President Maduro. Via Twitter, Morales sent his support, quote, comes at a time when imperialism is attacking democracy and people's self-determination. He also said Latin America's people will never allow the U.S. to use the region once again as their backyard. Support for Venezuela also came from the Movement for Social Justice in Trinidad and Tobago. The movement strongly condemns the United States' interference in Venezuela's internal affairs.
We stand fully in solidarity with President Maduro as the legitimately, democratically elected president of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. We condemn totally the intervention and interference in the internal affairs of Venezuela by the United States government, as evidenced by the statement by Vice President Pence. That must not be allowed to stand. We must stand in solidarity with the people of Venezuela to defend their constitution, to defend their sovereignty, to defend their right to self-determination.
Trinidad and Tobago's government stands ready to assist Venezuela in any way it can, as President Nicolás Maduro faces a challenge to his authority. Communications Minister Stuart Young issued the assurance as he tore into the U.S. president over the statements he made on social media.
I too have seen, I don't know if it's a tweet or if it's an official position from the United States president. That's his prerogative. He can say whatever he wants. At the end of the day, Venezuela, as far as I'm aware, remains a sovereign country. We stand, as we said throughout, as the Prime Minister said, we stand ready to assist in whatever way we can, including in any mediatory position that we may be able to play. But we certainly don't think one government calling on another government to fall is the right way to go about it.
And Russia has said it maintains its support for Venezuela as well and Maduro's government. Our correspondent in Moscow, Hans Eloro, has more.
Russia has reaffirmed its support for Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro. This comes after the United States and the country members of the Lima Group recognized the opposition leader Juan Guaido as interim president. Russian Senator Andrei Klimov said that his country will not change its political relations with Venezuela. An official statement published by the Foreign Relations Ministry says that the Venezuelan elections were carried out under watch of international observers. On his part, the Vice Minister of Foreign Relations, Sergei Ryabkov, reaffirmed Russia's solidarity with the Latin American country and strongly condemned the U.S. interventionist campaign against President Maduro. He also hopes to continue the intergovernmental trade and economic agreements between both nations.
President Maduro has also criticized Ecuador for the measures taken against Venezuelan migrants there. He says Ecuador's President Lenín Moreno is promoting xenophobia.
Recently, there were very lamentable events in Ecuador.
Por culpa del gobierno ecuatoriano y del presidente Lenín Moreno.
And I blame the Ecuadorian government, and President Lenín Moreno began a witch hunt, a persecution, an aggression against the Venezuelans. And sometimes Ecuadorian Venezuelan Ecuadorians who live in Ecuador. Today we sent 3 planes to bring all those Venezuelans back to their homeland, back to Venezuela. We received them with open arms.
Hundreds of Venezuelan migrants in Ecuador have left to Venezuela in 2 flights, part of the return to the homeland plan. The flights were organized by the Venezuelan government after the recent xenophobic attacks to the Venezuelan community. Many left the city of Ibarra, where they were attacked last weekend after a Venezuelan citizen killed a woman. Another flight is scheduled to leave from the coastal city of Guayaquil.
The day the tragedy occurred, the xenophobia started. I was attacked by a group of Ecuadorians when I was going back to work. They burned my clothes that were there. Me and some colleagues took refuge in a fruit store and they tried to enter, so we had to protect ourselves. And yesterday they returned. They had sticks, pipes, machetes, and we had to run away.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back. The United Nations has encouraged Colombia to keep working for peace despite the attack that took place in Bogota last week. The Security Council met this Wednesday to revise the implementation of the peace agreement in Colombia, but the main discussion was focused in the possibility of moving forward in the peace talks with the National Liberation Army. The UN envoy in Colombia, Carlos Varela, said that the attack highlights the need to put an end to violence in the country. The son of Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro has been linked to the family of the person accused of murdering Councilwoman Marielle Franco. According to local media, Flavio Bolsonaro employed the mother and wife of Adriano Magalhães, who according to the prosecutor's office is a member of the organization behind the killing. Prosecutors have ordered the arrest of Magalhães, who is currently on the run. Franco was killed in March 2018.
The mother and the wife of the former police captain and militia leader, who is a fugitive of justice accused of involvement in the death of Marielle, were only laid off from Congressman Flavio Bolsonaro's cabinet on November 13, 7 days after the Furnada 11 investigation was unleashed.
Rio de Janeiro's police has dismantled a criminal organization whose leaders might be involved with Franco's assassination. The criminal group operated in the west side of Rio, extorting citizens and merchants, taking lands out, and trafficking with weapons. A Mapuche leader in Chile serving 9 years in prison could soon have his sentence overturned. The Supreme Court has ruled in favor of Facundo Jones Walla, declaring his appeal as admissible. The ruling was the result of suspicions that the Chilean government, specifically the Ministry of Security, violated espionage laws. Jones Walla was convicted of arson and for possessing illegal weapons. Chile has criticized France after it rejected its extradition request of a former Chilean guerrilla member. Ricardo Palma Salamanca was a member of the Communist Party's armed wing during the Pinochet dictatorship and killed a senator closely allied with Pinochet.
Chile is a state where the law prevails. The resolution announced today denies both victims and relatives the possibility of obtaining justice.
Pope Francis has landed in Panama to celebrate the International Youth Day. The pontiff was welcomed by the Panamanian President Juan Carlos Varela. Both are set to meet this Thursday. The Pope will also meet with diplomats and Central American bishops. He will leave on Sunday after attending the International Youth Day event. And the Catholic Church has launched an app allowing worshippers to pray with the Pope. The Click to Pray app will let users know what the pontiff is praying for so they can join him. The Zimbabwean finance minister is attending the World Economic Forum in Davos. Talking about the country, he said that the government is determined to fix the economy after 20 years of decay. Our correspondent Matuba Majale brings us the details.
Political tensions are simmering in Zimbabwe, with President Emmerson Mnangagwa unable to attend the World Economic Forum held in Davos. Now, at that same economic forum, President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa is asking for the lifting of sanctions against Zimbabwe so that the country can get out of its current economic crisis. Now, Zimbabwe has asked South Africa for a cash injection of about $1.2 billion. But South Africa's treasury has since said it cannot help Zimbabwe at this point, even though it supports its quest for a permanent political solution. Now, a permanent political solution in Zimbabwe will be difficult to find amid protests that are going on. Now, protests have been going on for more than 10 days in Zimbabwe, with reports coming out of that country that at least 12 people have been killed. Soldiers and police have been patrolling the capital city, Harare, trying to quell those protests. The people are calling for a reprieve because they cannot find access to basic needs like fuel and food. Now, some 700 kilometers north of South Africa, and Zimbabwe, the Bight Bridge border, where Zimbabweans are trying to come in and out of the country to find those basic needs they cannot access in Zimbabwe. And you know, in Zimbabwe, the US dollar bill is the only money that works. And that is also hard to find in Zimbabwe for a lot of people. Now, the economic crisis going on in Zimbabwe is not the first challenge for President Emmerson Mnangagwa's government. Just few days or few weeks rather after being in office, the country was hit by a massive cholera outbreak, which the government had to deal with swiftly with the help of NGOs and neighboring countries. Now, the economic crisis now is stuck as a problem for President Emmerson Mnangagwa, with regional blocs like SADC, neighboring countries, Swaziland, Zambia, Mozambique, and South Africa itself calling for a permanent political solution in that country. But Emmerson Mnangagwa now is adamant that that solution will be found if all political parties gather around the table for a common solution for Zimbabwe. Now, back to you.
Thank you, Matua, for that report. South Africa's president has promised that his government will not allow land grabs. President Cyril Ramaphosa made assurance at the World Economic Forum in Davos. It comes after South Africa's parliament in December approved a report endorsing a constitutional amendment allowing expropriations without compensation. Land is a controversial issue in South Africa because racial inequality remains entrenched decades after the end of the apartheid.
Land reform is going to be handled in terms of our constitution, but as it is being handled, we are going to take care that those of our people who were denied the right to own land get equity. Everything should be done on an equitable basis. And that is the only way we can ensure that South Africa does indeed become a prosperous country where all the people of our country do benefit from what South Africa has to offer in the way of a better life for all.
Public consultations have begun in Trinidad and Tobago on the decriminalization of marijuana. This follows the Prime Minister's announcement that the use of marijuana for medical purposes will become legal. Several other Caribbean nations are debating the issue. In 2015, Jamaica decriminalized the use of 2 ounces or less. Last December, St. Vincent and the Grenadines made marijuana legal for medical purposes. Nicaraguans are celebrating the festivities of Saint Sebastian, one of the most emblematic religious events in the country.
Church bells announce the beginning of festivities. Colors, typical dances, and costumes highlight the event. It's a celebration filled with culture, religion, and tradition. In Diriamba, at the south of the Nicaraguan capital, Saint Sebastian is a Catholic saint, considered by this religion as miraculous. According to tradition, he was a member of the Praetorian Roman Guard. He converted to Christianity and was executed with arrows while being beaten with huge hammers.
The celebration is not the same without the dancing. For example, El Toro Huaco is the one that opens the party. Talcojal goes ahead and the rest are the other dances along with the saint. It's a struggle to keep this tradition.
Every year, worshippers come from all across the country. Ricardo says that he used to suffer from frequent respiratory issues, but says that his faith in Saint Sebastian healed him.
He's a miraculous saint. Everything that people ask, he fulfills it. For me, he's a very miraculous saint.
According to this historian, the tradition marks the unbreakable dignity and identity of the Nicaraguan people, as it takes rituals older than the colony, like this traditional dance.
The Huehuense is the first play that comes to defend the interests of Latin America. That is why it is named by UNESCO as an oral and intangible heritage of the humanity. The Huehuense has a set of dances that merge together, that are integrated.
During the last Sunday of the celebration, a horse parade takes place, where there are riders from all over the country, showcasing their skills as a way to pay tribute to the saint.
We'll be back in a minute. Stay with us. Welcome back. Hundreds of Palestinians have demonstrated against a newly opened road in the occupied West Bank. The newly opened road, which Palestinians have dubbed as the Apartheid Road, segregates the road into two separate way lanes with a high wall in the middle. The western side will be used by Palestinians, while the eastern side will be used by Israeli settlers to enter and leave Jerusalem.
Today's action was to reject the occupation policy, especially on this racist street. This street was opened a few days ago and it symbolizes discrimination. The street is only for the settlers and Palestinians are forbidden to step on it. This is the beginning of the implementation of the E1 plan, which aims to control large areas of Jerusalem's land to expand settlements.
The U.S. Senate will vote on Thursday on two compelling bills as lawmakers attempt to end the longest partial government shutdown in the country's history. One includes $5.7 billion to fund the U.S.-Mexico wall demanded by President Donald Trump. The other extends funding for closed agencies until February 8. The shutdown has forced 800,000 government employees to work without pay or take leave. The European Union's Economic Affairs Commissioner said the risk of a no-deal Brexit is growing. The Commissioner said it's now up to the British to tell the EU how they plan to break the impasse. Britain is set to leave the EU in late March, but there is no agreement in place yet. Last week, Parliament rejected the proposal presented by Prime Minister Theresa May.
The ball clearly is in the British side again. It's not a problem that can be solved by Brussels, maybe in Brussels later, but it has to be first dealt with in London.
And the Prime Minister clashed with Labour Party leader Jeremy Corbyn in Parliament over the failure of Brexit talks. May said that lawmakers' attempts to delay Brexit do not address the voters' decision to leave the European Union. The lower house will vote next Tuesday on alternative Brexit plans as the March 29th deadline approaches.
The only consistency in a strategy seems to be running down the clock on this by threatening no deal as an alternative to her dead deal. The CBI, Mr. Speaker, says the projected impact of no deal on the UK economy would be devastating. Leaving with no deal would be a hammer blow to manufacturing industry in this country, costing jobs and damaging living standards.
Hundreds of asylum seekers, including women and children, have been kicked out of one of Italy's biggest reception centers. They were evicted without notice and will be transferred to other centers hundreds of miles away. This after the Interior Minister decided to shut down the facility. Other centers across Italy are set to close in the coming months as well.
The most abominable thing is that we, the 107 workers in this center, will lose our jobs overnight. I've been living in Rome for 10 years, and on the 31st of January, I have to pack my bags and go home because they took away something that worked very well.
I have been here for 2 years, and the situation is very, very difficult. We do not know anything about our fate. I do not know where they will send me or when I am leaving. That's the problem. It's not humane to send away people without notice. That is the problem.
And with this story, we come to the end of this news brief. This and many other stories you can find at our website at telesurenglish.net. And don't forget to join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. Thank you for watching.